Fritz, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being willing to be our first person. And we'll just jump right into it because you have so much to share with us, Fritz. You were a young boy when Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933. Please tell us about your family and about yourself during those years living under the Nazis as their power grew. And as part of that, tell us what it meant to be Geltungsjude, or counted as a Jew. What did that mean for you and your family, and what were those early years like for you?
Geltungsjude, as you already mentioned, my mother was not Jewish, and my father was a German judge. Geltungsjude were subject to all rules and regulations, had to wear the star, and generally escaped deportation, particularly if they lived far away from Berlin. The closer away they lived, the more they were subject to the whims of a local commander. And I personally believe had the lasted the war somewhat longer, they would have probably deported us too.
Mm-hmm. So just so we understand, as long as one of the parents was Jewish, you were then counted as a Jew, but
only if I was raised Jewish.
Only if you were raised Jewish.
Had I not been raised Jewish, I would have been not subject, just a few, would not have to wear the star, and would have been only subject to some rules and regulations.
Okay. Tell us a little more about your father. You mentioned, we know that he was decorated in the First World War.
He was a liberal Jew, considered himself a German, always showed the flag on national holidays, even taught me how to salute the flag. And when 1933, he was dismissed. And the day he had to leave the court, they told him, "Go, don't leave by the front door. There are a group of Nazis, SA, brown shirts." My father, "No, I came in by the front door, and I will leave by the front door." And he walked out the front door. Mm-hmm. Actually, the moment he lost his job, immediately finances became a problem. My father received a small pension, had been smaller had he not been a veteran. And we immediately moved to a smaller apartment. My father started to work pro bono, giving advice at the Jewish community office. But I must say, my aunt, Alfreda Dressler, my mother's sister, stood by us from the beginning to end. And my mother's relatives also stood by us. However, my father's colleague, at least most of them, they felt so sorry they can't have any contact with us.
So not only to lose his job, his colleagues cut themselves off.
Absolutely. They came when they came with flowers. I'm so sorry.
Fritz, you were there as a boy during the 1936 Nazi Olympics, as they're known.
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
Actually, shortly after 1933, you already could see signs in restaurants. Jews are not welcome. You took a trip to a suburb, a big sign. The road to Palestine does not lead through this town. Stuff like this. 1936, the Olympic Games, everything disappeared. You could go everywhere. They had started to give special benches for Jews. All that disappeared. The moment the Olympics ended, started all over again.
So they cleaned it up for the tourists. You, I have to ask you to tell us though. You were a boy, and so you were up to some mischief, as I recall. Tourists would come and they would ask you as a local,
I thought, well, I shouldn't have done it. A friend of mine took the bus, double-decker. We set up and we drove. And then I started to explain to my friend, nonsense, of course. This is a station, and here they gave completely wrong information. Pointed out, let's see, we drove by, let's say, a ministry, and say, no, this here, they keep cattle in the back and stuff. And the poor people, of course, what is going on? Yeah. Completely confused the poor tourists.
Fritz, during those early years of Hitler gaining power and his power growing after 1933, after the Olympics, did your parents or did your father make any efforts to try to get out of Germany?
Yes, he tried, but not so easy. Number one, you need a quota. Number two, you needed money. And number three, you had to finally get a visa. It wasn't so easy.
Yeah, he tried, didn't he? Yeah.
Oh, we all tried. But the quota was quite restrictive. And even then, you needed money to get here.
Right.
And it happened very often. People actually had it all, had the affidavit and the war came. No, yes, we tried it. Yes. Because things are getting worse and worse, of course.
Right.
We all tried to get out.
You were 11 years old on the night of what we call Kristallnacht, or
Yes.
the night of broken glass, November 9th through 10th, 1938.
Yes.
What do you remember about
I remember
Yeah.
leaving for school and a broken window, shop window, could happen. Second, no. And then I realized what had happened. Actually saw the smoke from the synagogues.
Mm-hmm.
But what people didn't know, well, is still not known very widely. How did they know what windows to break? Did they have lists? No, they didn't have to. About a few months before that, before each shop owner had to have his name on his shop window in tall white letters. All they had to do go around, here, and break it. I remember at work, so some of the teachers had been sent to the concentration camp, I remember, and then we got a note. The report card, due to certain unusual circumstances, the court cars will be late.
They just refer to it as unusual circumstances.
Actually, there were some consequences. Right after that, we're not allowed to go to movies, not own a car, don't go to concert. Actually, that.
On that night of November 9th, 10th, which we call Kristallnacht, on that night, over 300 synagogues were burned across Germany and in Austria. More than 30,000 Jewish men were arrested. Thousands of Jewish businesses were destroyed and vandalized, and it was a horrible, horrible night. Some months after that, Fritz, war began in September 1939 of that year. When Germany invaded Poland, you said to me that for you, things really changed then.
Actually, that's three occurrences right before the war. Once, we had to have special identity cards with a great J. Okay. And whenever we went to a government office, we had to pull it out, announce in a loud voice, I am a Jew, and show it. And every time we had a signature, we had to give the number. And then, of course, we had to take the name Israel and Sarah.
So every Jewish male had to take the name Israel.
I became the Fritz Israel Gluckstein. and better not forget it. If you did, you were in trouble.
What were some of the other restrictions that were imposed on Jews?
After the war came, immediately, right away, for instance, certain ration cards, special ration cards, no white bread, no meat. You were only permitted to shop between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. Of course, my mother could, but if there was a decent shopkeeper said, let me have your family's ration cards, and they did it. But then, of course, you had to deliver optical instrument, furs, diamonds. They had to all be delivered right after this.
So you had to give up valuables, you had to give up radios, you also had to give up pets.
Pets, yes, pets.
Tell us about your dog.
Oh, the dog. Well, actually, this little dog was trained. When you gave him a snack and said, from the Nazi, but if you give him a snack, he said, from the Jew, he grabbed it. Eventually, we had to get rid of him too afterwards.
And of course, you had to start wearing a yellow star.
Yes, Radio Star, right. And I must say, people in Berlin at least, where there were quite a number of very decent people. Actually, well, somebody, more than once, company came up to me and gave me some special food, kind of milk or anything. No, no, I must say. And I just will point out here, the fact that one was a party member did not mean necessarily he was a Nazi or anti-Semite. But suppose, even friends, he worked at an insurance company, 2 children, mother-in-law lived. He told him, friend, you join or you will never have any promotion. The man was the hero. But he did. Well, again, the great conductor, Karajan, was no Nazi at all, but he wanted to become music director in Aachen. Well, he joined. Maybe he shouldn't have, but no. In school, we went to a great school, and the classroom teacher, homeroom teacher, was a Nazi member, party member. They treat the Jewish students and me like any other student.
So he treated the small number of Jewish students like any other student, this teacher?
Exactly. Yeah. Of course, I was lucky. Not all schools.
Right.
Well, I was always lucky. Look, my name, Gluckstein, means lucky stone. Therefore,
lucky stone. You shared with me, Fritz, that that police officers would come by with a pencil.
That is correct. You have to have the star right up here, and it had to be really fastened tight. And so as the police officer came, they tried to get a pencil behind it, and it was very bad. You could get in serious trouble. On the other side.
Do you remember when deportations began, when Jews started being deported and sent to camps?
I remember 41 deportation. So it started a very organized. You received a notice you will be deported. Be ready at that day. Then at that day, usually plainclothesmen came and sealed the apartment, and you had to march to the nearest collection point. From there you were deported.
And you remember that happening to some of the people that you knew?
Yes. And in school, of course, students later on actually people were actually just grabbed. School, yes, the last class had only came in the morning and your neighbor wasn't there, or I hope he was sick, could have been deported. Only it meant 35 students, and only 5 survived. So, 4 were, had Begleitungsstudenten like me, and 1 came back, and 2 survived.
2 survived.
Hiding.
Did your parents explain to you? You're still a boy. Did your parents explain to you what was happening at that time, or did you know?
We picked it up.
Yeah. You told me that also during that time, the Allies started bombing Berlin, and that for you as a kid, there were actually some benefits of the Allied bombing.
Well, we had to go to a special air raid.
The shelters.
Shelter. We had to go on. Of course, had to be only for Jews. And there we were sitting. On one hand, we were hoping it would stop soon, it would be over. On the other hand, we hoped it would last till 1 o'clock, past 1 o'clock. Because if it did, school started an hour and a half later, and classes lasted only 35 minutes. Children.
I think we're getting a good insight into you and your childhood. Fritz, you were able to continue in school until June 1942, and then the schools closed. After that, you went to work, or forced to go to work after that, and you had 3 encounters with the Gestapo. Will you tell us about them and the events that followed from those events?
After school closed, I first worked in the Jewish cemetery, and then I worked at the office of the Jewish community. Well, my mother accompanied some friends to a collection point. Then I said, "Well, what are you doing here? I bet you have Jewish family. Have your husband and your son report tomorrow morning downtown to the central collection point." Okay. Next morning, my father and I set out to the central collection point. It was Great Hamburger Street. Well, they put in a room with other Jewish men, just enough time to there's some mattresses, but the collection point was guarded by regular policemen under the command of the notorious SS captain Alois Brunner from Vienna, and he had forbidden to lie down. We had the mattresses. We sit down, but don't lie down. We did it anyway, but we weren't caught. Why? Because the police officers ran around and warned us whenever the commandant Brunner left the office for the inspection. Remarkable, had they been caught, I surely would have been wound up at the Eastern Front. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're sitting there. It only was a few days. Then the policeman came and said to me, "Half an hour downstairs for interrogation." My father, an older gentleman, a journalist, prepared me for the ordeal. Well, he said, "Don't be a hero. don't show any signs of contempt or hostility. Answer the question fully, but do not volunteer anything. Okay, get in the room where the Commandant Brunner was sitting there behind the desk, to the side about 10 SS officers watching the proceedings. He tried to catch me right away. Your mother's Jewish. No, I said, my mother's Irish. Very well, ask me some question, and then I tell you, we are going to give you a real decent job. Tomorrow you're reported to the special office, and they will give you a decent watch. And really released me. I step outside and I was surprised saw my father. And we both stepped out with relief. I remember the date, January 24th, 1943, my 16th birthday. Who forgets the day?
And this officer, this Brunner, he was notorious.
Oh, notorious, yeah.
And very powerful.
Actually, he escaped to Syria. They tried to get him there, I don't know. Vicious. I was lucky there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm going to take you back for a minute, Fritz, to the end when school ended for you. Tell us what was significant about your final report card. You got that final report card when school finished.
Oh, that final report card. Reason for final report card because of the dissolution of the Jewish school system.
So dissolve the school system for Jews, and that was that.
Well, that's it. And but at that time, what was that time, of course, deportation. The schoolmates went to work, but most of them were deported.
I want you to talk a little bit about something that you wrote about in your book and said to me. And you refer to your teachers. You said they were everyday heroes.
Yes. They came to work facing deportation, but they still came, helpless to forget the daily harassment. Actually, the school was an oasis. They knew they were deported, but through the profession, they came in every day. At that time, we didn't know what they were doing. We didn't appreciate it. But now, I really know what they did for us.
One of the other encounters you had was now after school was finished for you, you were forced to work in a factory.
Yes, after, we were sent to a factory working there for some, I don't know what, for the Air Force, workbench. There one day, I guess it was February 27th, good friend of mine, Gerd, side by side, Saturday morning, sitting there doing this, didn't know what, but we just did it. Door opens, SS officer comes in. Everybody out. Took our coats and assembled outside. Was a group of gun-carrying SS, and the officer said, tell the driver to come up. Gerd and I never forget this moment, because he used not just driver, he used a special bureaucratic form, Kraftfahrer, power driver, for some reason. We got on the truck, 2 SS men in the back, and we drove through town and wound up at the crew dance from a dance hall. There all the tables and chairs put aside, and we sat down on the floor. And then we sat, I guess, a day, and it was quite. Some of the women were very concerned because Saturday was half a day. Children might not have been in daycare or with friends, and whatever would happen. Well, after what a day day and a half or so, Gerd and I were questioned by a very nice uniformed policeman, not SS. And the K took our history and said, "You may go. Won't hope you see again. Fortunate for us." And Gert and I stepped out. It was 8 o'clock at night, and therefore were in violation of the regulation. At the time, curfew for Jews was 8 o'clock. We're not supposed to be out in the street. We walked home anyway. My mother was away to visit an aunt. Another of her aunts took care of us. Well, next was the end of the month. The ration cards had to be picked up, and I set out to get the ration cards. Lo and behold, with a moving truck right in front, everyone with a star inside, and they drove us to a collection point. Actually, he drove to a collection point to a synagogue, the synagogue where I had been bar mitzvah, where I had been.
The same synagogue where you'd been bar mitzvahed?
What?
It was the same synagogue where you'd
Same
been
bar mitzvah. Yeah. Inside, all the seats, pews had been removed and sitting on the floor. Well, after a couple of hours, taken out together with other people that had non-Jewish relatives. And I was driven to another collection point downtown. It was an administrative building of the Jewish community. Well, they were sitting in a room with 10 men, bare floors, and just enough room to lie down. Well, spent our time speculating on what would happen to us and stand in line to use the toilet in the restroom. Of course, the building wasn't made up to take an influx of a great number of people. Well, there we were sitting, and it was, I don't know how long, food had turned up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but after, I would say, 2 days, go out, released. And there I found my father and secretary of the Jewish community filled out a release slip, and it had to present it to the Commandant Sergeant SS Sergeant Snyder. And he saw my father's release slip and said, "A judge you have been, then you certainly have ruined the lives of many people." Well, my father, I hope not. And we stepped out. But what did we know? Outside, there was a demonstration by the non-Jewish women. They stood. They protested, demanded our release. First police, and then actually the FS came. They didn't go. They stood there. I would say it was the only public question of authority in the German Reich. Then they let us go. But we found out later that Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda and Folk Enlightenment, was afraid, wasn't any unrest. He said, with those people, we can deal later on, not now, particularly right after the debacle of the Stalingrad. And they let us go, and we had to report again to labor officers that were assigned to groups, gangs that cleaned after air raids, broke down walls, and went from place to place to help of the air raids.
Were you with your father on these work gangs?
Yes, in the beginning we were very different work
Yeah.
gangs. At the end, it happened to be at the same. But never I would say 10 or 20 work gangs. We had special permission to use public transportation, and was always quite easy. Good luck again. One day it was windy, power brake broke down. I was hit out. One of the fellow workers was a medic, gave me first aid, and then, remarkable, he took me to the next hospital, a Catholic hospital. The hospitals were not permitted to treat Jews, had to send them elsewhere. But this hospital took a risk for me on my part. And they sutured me, gave me a tetanus shot, and then released me. I will never forget it.
You were at one point, you and your father were forced on a work detail to take on what was told to you was a catastrophic mission.
I know. Actually, and the last time we ran in with the Gestapo.
Okay, yes, all right.
Very short.
Yeah.
We had to move at the time to a smaller apartment, couldn't move all the furniture and other stuff, stored it at the attic of a good friend. And one day I wanted to pick up something. Of course, I couldn't have the star. I had to cover it up. I couldn't go up there and tell people, look, the Jews have a storage upstairs. Well, I walk, suddenly stop. What do you see? Gestapo. You could tell the guys how they handled themselves, their clothing. Of course, he wondered, what is the guy doing without a uniform? Of course, I could show him my identification parts that I was released from service. But of course, he could see that I didn't have the star. Now what? I was standing there, actually not afraid, just wondering. Supernatural. But what happened? Well, he came there and looked me over, up and down. What was he doing? Questioning whether what mood the Jewish or the non-Jewish was predominant. Well, I was lucky again. After a while, he just handed back the papers, turned around. Another classmate of mine wasn't that lucky. He got almost deported. Good luck again.
Tell us about the catastrophic mission that you were sent on.
We had been bombed out twice and left the second time at the Jewish hospital. And one day I was leaving for work, stopped with a group of SS. You are hereby ordered to be on a special so-called catastrophe mission. Okay, out on a moving van. And there we drove again in the middle of town. And what did I saw? The Devil's Den. The Devil's Den. Eichmann's, what called Eichmann, the driving force behind the deportation.
This was Eichmann's headquarters?
Eichmann's headquarters. And it had been taking a hit, and they needed people to clean up. I was lucky again, my immediate supervisor was a young second lieutenant. I don't know how he got it, the SS, quite decent. No, harassed me. And then the other people that were not so lucky. Some of the officers are very nasty. deputy commandant, Hitler's Eichmann's deputy, came up, ran around with a big dog, trying to catch people that took arrest, or standing on a balcony cursing us. And one day we were asked to clean up in front of the building, guarded by SS men, just formal. Again, man had to run up and down the floor. One or two guys, one dreadful, almost harassing us, cursing us. The other guy, I still see him, small, red face, looked at us, never said a thing. And whenever we took a rest, he found something of importance to watch over there. Obviously, he didn't want to arrest us. I still don't know how he got into the SS.
It's evident from what you've said a couple of times that to you personally, humor is important. But you said humor was really important to you at that time. If you don't mind, give us an example of, as you're doing these work details, you were telling jokes to each other.
Goebbels, Minister of Propaganda and Folk Enlightenment, fell into the river, Spree River that goes to Berlin. A young guy comes, pulls him out. How can I thank you? What can I do for you? Well, he said, you can give me a state funeral. Why a state funeral? Well, if my father finds out I pulled you out of the river, he's going to kill me. SS Gestapo, what will do? I'm going to shoot you. But if you can tell me which one of my eyes is a glass eye, I'll let you go. He said, easy, it's a right eye. Now, how did you know it? Oh, easy. It looks so human.
The other thing you shared with me is that, there you are, a kid, and on the work details, your father and other adults would also try to continue your education.
Oh, yes. Young people working. I had 3 classmates, actually. The young people don't learn anything. You see, the people that were lawyers and scientists, they gave us a question. I remember what the answer was. It was, what you call those things?
The wheelbarrow?
The wheelbarrow had to be filled with rubble, and I had to take it elsewhere. Well, while it was being filled, I was given a question which I had to answer when I came back. I still remember what I had to do. When I came back, you will give the names of the Great Lakes in the United States. Well, they tried their best.
From what you described to me, Berlin was bombed heavily, food was scarce, and conditions became more and more difficult. Under those circumstances, as the war was coming to a close, how did you and your parents manage to continue to survive and live under those circumstances?
Well, we did our best. Only lived.
I mean, food must have been almost impossible to get.
Actually, what could we do? Fortunately, actually, my aunt helped out. And actually, the ugly, they were quite hungry. Food was very particularly, but there to at the end actually came to the point right before. Actually, we didn't use the ration cards. We just went to the neighborhood grocer. If he had something to give out, he gave. If not, yes, it was. At one time, interesting too, when the Jews still were allowed to have meat. At the beginning, I said, you could have meat, but after a while, I mentioned it, meat, you was getting the meat. In our house was a horse butcher, but you could have horse meat. I think that was and one of our relatives went there and got horse meat. And the family wondered, how did you have a nice portion of meat? Well, he said, the butcher is very friendly. He gave me extra ration. They never knew that we were eating horse meat. This came in handy afterwards too, when we had access to the horse meat. Unless you know what it is, you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. As the German defense of Berlin was collapsing, as it was falling apart, you said, and I know you want to tell us this, you said that you and your friends, as you were, because you're building tank barriers, you and your friends figured it would take 31 minutes for the Russians to break through the tank barriers.
Yes. We spent all night building tank barriers, and then we left. How long will it take the tanks get through? 31 minutes. Why? The tanks will come to the barriers, will stop, and the drivers will laugh for 30 minutes and get through. Actually, that's what really happened. We didn't do a very good job. These one army, there were two armies coming to Berlin. The east, Marshal Zhukov; the south, where we worked, did our tank barriers, Marshal Konyev. And they got into Berlin very fast. And actually the south and western part of Berlin wasn't as bad. Well, we did a little bit in liberating Berlin.
In fact, you said that you survived because...
Konyev was the Ukrainian army, he came in.
Yeah, you survived because of your mother, because of luck, and because of
Marshal Konyev, he got in there.
Because he came in so quickly. Yeah. Before liberation, before the Russians had occupied it, you were forced on yet another work detail right at the end of the war, and this was to build the new Berlin for the Nazis.
Yes.
Say something about that.
Actually, one day, you are now a truck, they drove us to a different point. We're building the foundations for a new Berlin after the war. I guess that was in 42 or 43. And therefore, while we are building foundations, but let's say after a month or so, they realized probably, and we again had to do our demolition work.
You shared with me that as the Russians were occupying, coming in, there was a point where you genuinely knew that you were safe from the Nazis. When was that point?
Oh yeah, well, we were working. We knew come in, and one day we were working close to SS barracks, and what did we see? A long line of trucks pushed by SS men. Oh, so delighted. Oh, we realized if SS, they don't have any gasoline, the end of the Third Reich must surely be close. That was quite, I never forget it.
I've read, and many people in the audience may have too, accounts of what it was like in Berlin right after the Russians occupied it. How were you treated by the Soviet troops?
But
how were you treated by the Soviet troops? Did you have any interaction with them?
We were lucky. Unfortunately, in some cases, troops didn't behave very well, arrest women. But I was lucky. In fact, when the Russians came, I was out trying to get some food. Of course, didn't have the star anymore. And I ran back to our apartment house, and actually, but my parents and the people who lived were standing outside. The Russians had arrived. And of course, they wanted to know, what is the guy doing? SS? Jew? No, no Jew, all Jews. Fortunately, one of our fellow spoke some Russian and explained it. Well, at the beginning, yes.
So they were suspect that you were
Absolutely.
trying to just get away as former Nazis.
But one thing's good. Well, of course, I could always choose a star or something.
Right.
But they were suspicious.
Did you, your father or others who survived, other Jews who survived, did you consider getting some kind of revenge at that time?
No. He wouldn't have. Yes, just wait. We are going to get him. When the time came, no, we wouldn't lower ourselves to their level. People that harassed us, standing there watching that we didn't go in the store after 5 o'clock and stuff like this. No, we wouldn't have. Or some nasty foreman at the gang. No, we didn't.
But what were conditions like once you were liberated after the war? Berlin was a ravaged city. What were conditions like for you and your family?
Well, first occupied by the Russian, and then by the Western powers. Mm-hmm. You always could tell who was in. They took charge of the administration every month. If you got black bread, the Russian did. If you get white bread, the Western power. And food was quite scarce. Mm-hmm. And we moved to a pair outside the apartment house, to a house in the suburbs. And then we could plant potatoes in front potatoes in front and the potatoes went in the back, and the tomatoes in front, and we got by. And it was a very cold winter. Waterline froze. We were close to the woods, so you could get some woods, but in the city it was awful. Waterline froze, for instance, but the sewage pipes broke, toilets couldn't be used. Can't you imagine? Well, actually, what did people do? If you lived outside, you could bury the waste. But inside, what did you do in town? Well, what you could see, people you could see have wrapped paper bags or something which he stealthily deposited on the parks and the gardens. When it was cold, it was perfectly all right. But once it got thawed, you can imagine what happened.
It was awful. Yeah.
And of course, that time electricity was rationed. But we were lucky. We got care packages from friends, and the care package had everything from toilet paper to cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And cigarettes was most important. The currency was cigarettes. If you had cigarettes, you could have it bedded. And
because it was like currency, right?
Yes, yes. And the two of us, most were very camels, and they came lucky strike, but it was actually a currency. But I remember still, when I came here, shortly entered the boat. I said, ladies and gentlemen, once you step foot on the boat, a cigarette is just a cigarette. I tell you, it was awful. If one gets cigarettes, get opera tickets. You won't believe it. Mm-hmm. And one thing, of course, that care packages had instant coffee. Now, coffee, the coffee grounds were used 3 or 4 times. And there you have the coffee grounds, and it disappeared. We never seen instant coffee.
You came to the United States several years after the war, 1948. Tell us what made you come to the United States? How did you decide that? How did you get here? And then what did your parents decide to do?
To go back to school was difficult. But after a while, I thought, well, I think things were getting slowly better. But I felt the future for me might be the United States. And I applied at this organization that sponsors the joint committee. And well, my parents hated to let me go. My father was back on the bench. And
so he was able to resume being a judge?
yes, the time lost counted for his retirement and advancement. Mm-hmm. He said, look, I'm 60-year-old, what can I do? Mm-hmm. I can't practice law. The law is completely different over there, based on English law, here on based on Roman law. But you go. He said, but I hope you will take a profession that is not limited to one country, like law. Well, and so I did.
You told us about your 16th birthday when you were interrogated by Brunner, this terrible SS officer. How did you celebrate your next significant birthday, your 21st birthday? You were on board a ship, right?
I came out.
Yeah.
The ship, I was 21st on the ship.
Coming to the United States. I know we don't have time to get into many other things, but I did want to ask you a couple of questions. We had several photographs from when you were young. You didn't get a chance to tell us, but you lost several homes, were bombed out completely. How did you end up with those photographs?
Those were our photographs. They came back from aunts and relatives after the war. They came, let me give you the photographs. No, all burned. No.
And I wanted to ask you about your memoir. What has it meant to you to write your memoir? What has this meant to you to be able to write this book?
I guess it might be of interest what happened. So,
there's many more details in here, as you can imagine. And then,
actually,
yeah.
Let's be perfectly honest here. It was my good wife, Maren, that more or less insisted that I write it. He said, it might be of interest. Well, and I said, okay.
I'm glad you did.
Okay.
We're going to hear from Fritz again in just a minute to close our program. As I think you probably can guess, we only got the surface of most of what Fritz went through. I'd love to wish he could tell us about how he got himself established here, what he did, how he met his wife, but all that can come later. Anyway, thank you for being here. We want to let you know that we will have programs for the next 2 weeks until we close our program on August 8th. All of our programs are, you're able to view them on our YouTube channel, so we hope that you'll be able to watch other programs if you wish, and hope you'll put us in your thoughts for coming back in 2020, because we'll resume again next spring. It's before Fritz finishes. I want to mention that when he's done, we'll get him upstairs, and he's going to sign. He's available to sign copies of his book if you're interested. Good chance to also chat with him for a minute if you wish. It's our tradition at First Person that our first person has the last word. And so with that, I'm going to turn back to Fritz to close today's program. Your last word, Fritz. What do you want to close with?
I was very fortunate to have come to the United States, and I'm forever grateful for the help I received and the opportunity given to me. I value my U.S. citizenship very highly. And I am often asked what I have learned from my experience. Well, the answer is very simple. Carpe diem. Seize the day and don't trust the next one. And if you have 2 bottles of wine, drink the better one first.